What is up, my Canadian cousins? Welcome back. Yes, yes, yes. The 1972 Summit Series, Team Canada versus the USSR. I'll just recap where we left off. The Team Canada had not really taken the game very seriously in the beginning, or I should say their training very seriously, because they were led to believe by scouting reports and otherwise that this was going to be a cakewalk for them. And it certainly was not. They just didn't fully understand the Soviet Union's capabilities and style of hockey. The beginning of this documentary did a very good job at setting the Cold War stage for the series itself, and so it spent some time on that, and then ultimately laid out how Game 1 went and how in the first few minutes of the game, Team Canada scored a couple of goals, and it looked like they were going to steamroll over the Soviets. And then the Soviets found their groove and ended up winning the game shockingly 7-3. After that, after highlighting the game, they went into some detail on the Soviet system of training and left us off where we were about to start Game 2. I think I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we've got a lot of material to get to. I just wanted to say a couple of things that, because I posted this before filming and reacting to this second part, I've gotten to read many of the comments, and it was so nice getting to read and reflect on, your experiences at the time, those of you who were either in grade school, high school, or adults. So many of the schools brought TVs into the classrooms, and this really was this major national event, and I can understand that. And I was a baby at the time. I wish I could go back in history and live through that as a Canadian, frankly, or as at least somebody who is proud to have been called honorary Canadian by many of you people. And I do not take that compliment lightly. I'm very honored by it. I read that Ken Dryden, the goalie, I don't have to tell you who Ken Dryden is, but just in case some of you are watching and aren't a hockey fan, but although I think he served in Parliament at some point, so I'm sure you all know who he is. Anyway, I read that he had said that the golden age of hockey for everyone was when they were 12 years old. And I love that because everything is new and magical when you're 12 years old, right? And I was 12 years old during the New York Islanders dynasty. It was only following the U.S. winning the Winter Olympic gold in 1980. And I can say for sure that the golden age for me was when I was 12 years old and, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, and made me love the game so much and appreciate it, always knowing that it was Canada's sport. My, hockey heroes, I use that term loosely, but you know what I mean, from back then, we're almost all Canadian. And the game is different now and it has a different profile, but it will always be Canada's game. Even as a non-Canadian, I can fully appreciate what the big deal was. It was a big deal for myriad reasons. And one is that I guess I'm old enough to know and understand and appreciate what it was like to live through the Cold War. Things got pretty heated in the late 70s and early 80s. Reagan stepped up the arms race with the potential for the Star Wars missile defense system, and things got crazy. I watched a series on American television. I wonder if you guys got it there. It was called the Day After. It was about nuclear war, and it was scary as heck for a little boy watching that. And but then I, as a teenager and young man, went through the period of glasnost and perestroika, and ultimately saw the Cold War end. It is very sad that it has returned in a different way. So I can understand why these sporting events mattered very much. Beyond the Cold War, I just understand that it was a matter of national pride for Canada, pure and simple. So I'm going to leave you with this before we get into the video. Da Canada, niet niet Soviet. Let's see how this plays out. I'm so excited. See you on the flip side. Thanks.
I remember saying to my wife, I'm glad I'm not Harry Sinden, because I'll tell you what, there's got to be some changes. we knew that we had underestimated them. And okay, what do you do? Our game plan didn't work. And obviously some players really struggled out there, and so we knew there was going to be changes in the lineup for sure.
The fact that they beat us up pretty good in the first game, no longer was this going to be a friendly series.
Harry told me, he said, Phil, I'm going to put you with JP, Parisi, and Wayne Cashman. I said, fine.
We had to play a different style against the Russian. We could not go skill versus skills at that time because we were not in shape to do this. So we had to play more like along the walls and stuff, keep the puck away from the middle of the ice.
Parisi jammed against the board.
All of a sudden we're finishing each one of our checks and we're playing the game with a lot more intensity than we had played before. We had to kind of rough it up a little more.
And there's a near mix-up there when they fought for that puck.
I was just going to say it's getting rough.
Team Canada's blue-collar approach to Game 2 was more like a typical National Hockey League game. The Soviets were unaccustomed to the rough
have to use your
physical
physicality,
play, and it unnerved them.
They were going to slow them down, and they're going to slow them down physically. There wasn't a lot of violence, but the Russians were surprised as the physicality. The Russians would complain about it because this is their baptism. Their frustration had built up enough so that their captain, Karlamov, came over to protest the best he could with the language barrier. He ended up, bumping me, and there's only one item that occurs then, and that's a misconduct.
Karlamov ran into the referee, and he'll likely get a misconduct. Karlamov.
While the Soviets were unable to unleash an attack similar to Game 1, the Canadians took an early lead on a goal by Phil Esposito.
The pressure on my brother.
I mean, already the tenor of the game seems different than Game 1. He's about to say the pressure on his brother. So this isn't Ken Dryden now. This is Esposito.
Was far greater than the pressure on me.
Tony Esposito. Why I can't just...
Boy, and you couldn't talk to him before the game.
His first name.
He'd
Sorry,
sit
guys.
there like this.
Tony, right?
And you go to talk to him, you go, get away from me.
I don't communicate. I prepare myself. It's not a fun preparation where guys are joking around, and I wasn't the most fun guy to be around, Slightly. That's how it was.
Out the right side, a shot. Oh, a nice save. Another shot. Who's coming in on goal? A shot. Oh, and another save. Again in front of it. Even shoots. Another great save.
With Tony Esposito stopping all but one Soviet shot, Team Canada began to find a comfortable rhythm. And then iced the game midway through the third period on a spectacular individual effort by Peter Mahavlich.
I faked the shot well outside the blue line, and their defenseman got up on his tippy toes a little bit, and I made a little move and deked him and went in alone on Tretiak and made a move and scored a backhanded goal to make it 3-1.
Nice.
What an effort by Peter Mahavlich.
It was a real momentum changer for us then, and Vladislav Tretiak, who I've seen over the last few years, has said he still doesn't understand how I scored that goal.
Game on. It's a series. One thing I never mentioned before, but I thought it. I really like Team Canada's, the design of its uniform, especially for the early 70s when, not quite known for being the best stylistic era, but it's really cool. Making the maple leaf out of most of the jersey using a positive and negative space.
By Game 3, it was still an open question which Team Canada was going to show up that night, because the Team Canada from Game 1 had been soundly defeated. Team Canada in Game 2 had been much more aggressive, attacking with a lot more energy and drive. It was kind of a 50-50 proposition at that point.
In Winnipeg for Game 3, Team Canada's energetic play continued. The Canadians jumped out to a 3-1 lead midway through the second period.
Esposito got a pass from the corner and fired it home to give Canada a 3-1 lead.
We started off well, and then as the game went on, it just seemed like we ran out of gas for some reason. That happens. Some nights you just don't have that, you know?
Bumping there on the side, Lebedev, 23. Here's a shot, and he scored!
The Soviets had this ability, which they showed in Game 3, to score in bunches.
Goal! He shoots, he scores! Harlamov
They could explode very quickly for 2 or 3 goals in rapid succession.
into the corner, passed in front, rolls loose. Here's another pass right in front. He shot to score! And they tied it up. Bodnov.
What I'm taking this to mean, sorry if I'm not understanding this correctly, but I think, this is where the superior conditioning of the Russians come in. And it sounds like what they do by having these explosive moments of multiple scoring is just taking advantage of Team Canada once it's fatigued, maybe before they make line changes or whatever. I don't know, but taking advantage of fatigue and using their superior conditioning to just pounce on a moment of tiredness and whatnot.
They tied it up. That really demoralized the Canadians.
After the disappointing tie in the third game, the Canadians still found reason to be encouraged. Since the humbling loss in Game 1, Team Canada's play had steadily improved. So as the series moved to Vancouver for the final game in Canada, Coach Harry Sinden thought he saw a solution to an uncomfortable situation.
When we invited these 35 players to join the team, we promised that they would get into at least one game each.
You've got 35 guys and only 17 can play. Well, you got 18 guys that are ticked off at all times because they want to be on the ice.
And we won the game in Toronto and tied the one in Winnipeg. And I felt that maybe I could fulfill this promise a little bit and inject some of the younger players into the lineup.
The coaching staff made some changes, put some other people in the lineup, and things did not go well right from the get-go.
Up the center to Petrov. Over the line, he stops. And getting that passing player, Jenko's drive, scores! Right wing, they're closing in. Every man is up now for the pass. Here's Lachenko getting his shot. He scores! And the Soviets have taken a 2-0 lead. The Soviet power play is devastating.
So that's Ken Dryden back in goal, I think, right? Just based on the hair color.
Their power play was good. It was really good.
They're watching their team thoroughly outclassed. I mean, this was as one-sided as you could ever imagine.
A perfect play by Blinov.
And the performance of the Canadians was woeful.
People were angry, they were upset, they were furious at the players.
They're giving the goalies the Bronx cheers when they stop a soft shot.
Dryden caught that one with a little derision from the fans.
Then a tremendous sense of disillusionment sets in.
Going in, number 9 is knocked over by Goldsworthy, and he gives him the elbow again.
That's when you begin to get the booing from the stands.
The Canadian defense is not standing up, and the Soviet player is walking right into the slot. The crowd didn't seem to like the fact that Mahavlich was sitting on Petriak there for what seemed like 10 seconds.
And the fans were just, they just wouldn't let up. We were traitors at that point to the country.
It was a very unsportsmanlike manifestation of this fear coming true, the worst nightmare coming true. Maybe we're not the best after all. Maybe the Soviets.
Yeah, look, that's tough. I don't like it. I'm watching this from a position of hindsight 50 years later. But 50 years, geez. But I don't like it, but it's human nature, and especially in a crowd mentality. I guess it's the manifestation of the shock, the frustration, and the absolute failure of the media and the scouts and everything to manage the fans' expectations. But it is a bit of a bummer because the players certainly are not trying to lose.
Do have a superior brand of hockey, and we've been kidding ourselves all these years, and the feeling of being betrayed, or hoodwinked, or fooled made people angry.
Well, it's one thing to have a crowd turn on you for the way your power play is not working or anything. It's entirely another thing to have this feeling that the country is ashamed of you. And I think that that's what the Vancouver crowd was expressing. And at that moment, I truly think this country was ashamed of its soldiers.
Harlamov turning, getting a backhand right point, he scores! Nikolov from Harlamov. Nikolov.
Must have felt
Lost
awful.
5-3 there. And
Absolutely
the
awful.
booing was too much for me. And then they said that I was picked as star of the game from the Canadian side. And as I'm skating, they were screaming obscenities at me like you wouldn't believe. And saying the communists are better. Why don't you admit it? This communism is better. What the I wanted to get my stick and throw it at them like a spear.
The people didn't realize how good the Soviet team was.
Then
Now
Johnny
they know
Esau
how good they are.
started to ask me questions.
How good is both teams are.
With these guys yelling, I lost it.
For the people that boo us, geez, all of us guys are really disheartened and we're disillusioned and we're disappointed in some of the people. We cannot believe the bad press we've got, the booing we've gotten in our own buildings.
The Americans have their great speeches from Gettysburg, and Kennedy's "Ask not what your country can do for you" speech, but our greatest speech was by a sweating hockey player in a rink in Vancouver.
I'm really disappointed. I am completely disappointed. I cannot believe it. Some of our guys are really, really down in the dumps. We know, we're trying. What the hell? I mean, we're doing the best we can. Us guys, 35 guys that came out and played for Team Canada, we did it because we love our country and not for any other reason. No other reason. They can throw the money for the pension fund out the window. They can throw anything they want out the window. We came because we love Canada.
I wasn't there for the players. I wasn't there for the league. I wasn't there for that. I was there for the...
I don't know what he's talking about with the pension fund. Is there was probably some player association deal with that going on at the time. But I mean, look at the sincerity. I mean, obviously that wasn't planned. He was speaking from the heart, the sincerity, and just look at the sweat flowing off of his face. That is the face of a man who just gave his all, and it wasn't enough, and they have to regroup and rethink where they're at.
Country.
Phil, I'm sure that the people can see from the sweat just pouring off your face that you and all your players have given 100%, and we look forward to some great games from you and the rest of your gang when you get over to Moscow, and we can wish you the very best of luck.
John,
keep working hard.
We're going to get better. I know.
Attaboy. Thank you very much, Phil.
I don't think everybody likes to hear it.
I mean, I kind of interrupted, but he said we weren't there for the league. We weren't there for ourselves. We were there for our country.
We weren't going to get them back by discussing it.
We got out of Dodge, so to speak. We left not town, we left the country. We ended up going over to Sweden.
The trip to Sweden was built into the schedule as a break between the 4 games in Canada and the 4 in Moscow. It was supposed to be 10 days of relaxation, with 2 games sprinkled in against the lightly regarded Swedish national team.
Oh, it was tremendous. It was just tremendous. Plus, we played in an Olympic-sized rink. That was a totally different thing, you know. It's wider and more room behind the net, and it was so important, you know. And then again, more conditioning, more ice time. It's another week.
But when the game started, the trip turned out to be anything but a holiday.
We didn't know going in how good the Swedish players were. But they were just as good as the Russians. Thank heavens they were, because we didn't need weak opposition. We needed tough opposition, and we got that. That's what our team needed. And it was physical, it was dirty, it was the way we were going to have to play in Russia.
Very good point, Bobby.
We played the Swedes 2 exhibition games, and it was a bloodbath. It really was. Wayne Cashman got one of the worst injuries I've ever seen. And one of these idiot Swedes filed their stick down and stuck him in the mouth, cut his tongue wide open. Couldn't play.
Cashman's horrific injury required 50 stitches and kept him from playing any of the 4 games in Moscow. But for the rest of Team Canada, the break served a purpose both on and off the ice.
It was going to be a wonderful experience, going to be able to play with the Espositos, the Cornways, Savards, Lapointe back there. The other side of the coin is anybody that kept you from the Stanley Cup, you didn't like them. And you had to bump heads with them all the time.
We weren't a team. We were just a bunch of guys thrown together. So we went over there, and that's when we really gelled. And we didn't have any pressure on us because we're isolated.
It takes time, and sometimes it takes adversity for people to pull together as a team.
In the middle of Stockholm.
Guy Lapointe's wife, I believe, gave birth. And we got a couple of cases of beer, went right across from the Grand Hotel at this park. Everybody was there. Even Dryden came. And Kenny didn't hang with the guys too often, but even he was there.
All of a sudden, we're getting a lot closer than we were the first couple of games.
And I think right there we became a team because the next day at practice, Eagleson said to us, the Russians are trying to change the deal. They wanted no wives can come over, no girlfriends can come over. And I stood up and I said, Harry and Fergie, Al, get out, please. Leave us alone for a while. I stood up there and I said, guys, we can tell them to stick it in their ass and we're going back home unless they live up to the deal. Or we can say, fine, let's go over there and play. My personal point of view is, you make a deal, you stick by the damn deal. You stick by it, you don't change it in midstream. So we should go, but they better stick to the deal.
When the Soviets backed off their demands, the series moved forward, with Team Canada determined to restore its pride on the ice.
We ended the week in Sweden with 2 of the toughest workouts I've ever put a team through. If they had eaten and drank too much while they were in Sweden, I was going to get it out in one day. But we did prepare ourselves to go to Moscow.
Well, we went to Moscow, and back then you were behind the Iron Curtain. There were guys on the tarmac with machine guns back then. People are walking around, nobody smiles. So it was depressing.
We felt that we were being watched all the time. You know, we couldn't go anywhere without having KGB watching us.
The general public were really, really nice people, but they were...
And by the way, the KGB were really watching their own players when they were in Canada, because God forbid if any of them tried to defect.
We're under severe surveillance or whatever.
People didn't have blue jeans. They had these gray burlap type pants. They loved blue jeans. They wanted to buy your blue jeans all the time.
A lot of people have seen in the Canadian-Soviet hockey series something much deeper than a game of shinny. To them, the whole thing has been a clash of cultures. What, for example, would the highly disciplined citizen of the Soviet Union make of Phil Esposito, who by any measurement is very much his own man?
And all of a sudden, it's like, aliens in town.
This is Game 5 of the Canada-Soviet series from Moscow.
The fans that were at the games in Moscow, those were all Russian elite. All the tickets were sold to people that are very connected, very influential, movie stars, singers, top-notch doctors, professors in college. Those were not street folks. You couldn't buy the tickets to see the game. Like the regular folks had to watch it over TV.
Unlike in Canada, all 4 games in the Soviet Union were played in Moscow, at the Luzhniki Ice Palace, where Game 5 got off to a somewhat
Well, you have to make it easy for all the Communist Party leaders and their friends to see it, right?
With a small bouquet of flowers.
Little girls came out and handed us flowers. And a petal or something must have fallen.
7-й номер. Phil Esposito.
And number 7, Phil Esposito. And I skated and
Oopsie.
If I'd have done that, I would have been so embarrassed. I probably would have, hung my head and tried to get back into line. But that's who Espo was. Made a big deal of it. Threw out his arms like this and ta-da, ta-da.
And I give it the bow. And when I looked up, I made perfect eye contact with Brezhnev.
Maybe breaks the tension, too.
You know, the guy with the eyebrows out to here? I mean, I made perfect contact and I went.
Yeah.
And the guy next to him started to laugh. And Brezhnev got. The guy stopped. And I never forgot that.
Well, let's hope that's not the story of our trip to Moscow.
Leonid Brezhnev.
When we were going back to Moscow, we thought, on the big ice, these guys are just going to croak.
The big ice surface, we had to get used to that. John Ferguson came to me before the first game in Moscow, and he come up to me and just nobody else around.
It's a good thing they
says,
had the
Paul,
tune-up games in Sweden.
We need your line to do well. Clark Ellis and I really believe we were the best line.
The right combination of three guys. Ellis was a diligent positional player, and I was just a guy in the middle who chased the puck around.
And the pass with Clark, who spikes right in front of Clark!
And Henderson was speed. Lots of speed if there was any open ice.
And so with the bigger ice surface, I was really anticipative of that. This is going to be good for my game. When I get open, they're going to be able to get me the puck, and with my speed, hopefully I'm going to be able to burn them a little bit.
Smart.
Recovered by Canada. Clark makes a long pass to Henderson. He's in the clear. Right to the goal.
Paul Henderson's third goal of the series, midway through the second period, followed goals by J.P. Parisi and Bobby Clark to give Team Canada a 3-0 lead in Game 5. But the Soviets stormed back, scoring 4 goals in a 5-minute span midway through the third period to win the game 5-4.
Game is over. And the Soviets made a tremendous.
They didn't think it was going to work out that way.
With the loss, there was no longer any margin of error for the Canadians. To win the series, they would have to take the remaining 3 games in Moscow. And it didn't help that they were completely paranoid of the entire Soviet experience.
Strange things were happening, for sure. They were pretty spooked about being in the land of the enemy.
It was Cold War time, and Frank Mahovlich had a legitimate concern about going to Russia. His parents were from Croatia, which was not treated very well by the Russians. He had some strong ill feelings.
And that just reminded me in 1989, I was my senior year of high school, and I had an opportunity to go to Moscow. It was still the Soviet Union, but it was during the age of glasnost, and there was a thawing of relations. And my father had served in U.S. Army intelligence in Munich, Germany during the Cold War in the late 60s, and had very strong feelings about me not going behind the Iron Curtain.
Sometimes telephones would ring in the middle of the night in the players' hotel rooms. And they would pick up the phone and there'd be nobody there.
Phone calls would come at 3 in the morning. I remember pulling the phone out of the wall and they came and fixed it. If I pull it out of the wall, it means I don't want to be disturbed.
They began to feel that the Soviet team was using this kind of tactic to throw them off.
There were a lot of almost like...
Well, I don't think the team itself, but definitely the government, the KGB.
James Bond-like stories, they didn't want to live in the hotel because they were afraid that the rooms are bugged. The Russians, through the KGB, will find out their game plan.
We found microphones. We did. We found microphones behind the mirrors and the beds. There isn't a guy in our team that'll tell you that they didn't have the microphones.
We had taken our own food and had it shipped in from Finland.
We brought over 350 cases of beer, 350 cases of soda, 350 cases of milk, and 350 steaks. When we got there, everything was in half. And the only thing we were really angry about is they stole our beer. We had to drink vodka, homemade vodka. You ever taste homemade vodka? Go in your garage, get turpentine, and drink it. Holy cripe, is it bad.
Oh my God. 350 cases of beer for 4 games, guys.
Soviets moving into a commanding lead in this series, having won 3, tied 1, and lost 1. This 6th game is a must for Canada if they're to win or tie the 8-game series.
If we don't win the last 3 games, we're going to be known as losers for the rest of our lives.
We needed to win just 1 of the 3 remaining games to claim the series. So I think both the guys and the coaches were already thinking the series was won. But we forgot to account for the fact that Canadians always fight to the last second.
It's going to be a different game. The Canadians are coming out really hitting.
With its back against the wall, Team Canada returned to a more physical style of play in the next 2 games, starting with a vicious moment midway through the second period of Game 6.
I'll still never forget the image. I'm looking down at the ice, and there's Harlamov skating up the ice, and Bobby Clark is about 3 strides behind him. And you can see Bobby Clark here in Game 6 saying to himself, there's Harlamov. We're losing this series because of him. Bobby Clark gripped his hockey stick like a golf club, whipped him right in the ankle, broke his ankle. But guess what, folks? The series changed.
I believe on this one, here's
I don't think he meant at that time that he was going to break the guy's ankle or anything like that, but certainly Harlamov was going to go down one way or the other.
Of course I think it was intentional. Valeri was the brightest spot on our team, and I think the Canadian coaches instructed to get him off the ice by any means. And Clark, unfortunately, was successful in doing that.
Well, I got to pull Sergeant Schultz on this one. I didn't know it happened. I didn't see it happen. I didn't know anything about it. The story went that Bobby went out under instructions from someone. It certainly didn't come from me, and I don't think it came from John Ferguson, my assistant.
He never told me to do that. I did it on my own. Chased him down the ice and whacked him.
Tempers are flaring at every opportunity.
That's the way Clarkie played the game.
I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I believe Harry.
And I would say probably in that team, he was the only guy that would go out there and do something like that. But he would have done that for the Philadelphia Flyers. That's who he was, and so he wasn't out of character. Clarkie was so competitive, he'd push his grandmother down the steps to win a hockey game.
And take her dentures?
It was an awful thing to do, but it sure felt good.
That's part of the game. And I have no problem with it. None.
Certainly was then.
You understand this was war.
The 6 and 7, they were nasty games.
When Canadians are losing, they start gooning it up.
They're commies now. They're not only Russians, now they're commies.
What we encountered, we weren't quite used to it, even though we were warned that the Canadians play tough. I would hit them in the ribs. What did they expect? That was my way to pay them back.
Fair is fair.
There were some players on that team that you could really hate.
It's all extra motivation for us.
Down in that ice, it's just sheer war. These two teams are going at it. They're not sparing the lumber. They're not sparing the body.
Now it was really our system against their system and stuff, you know, and it became a personal.
Real scanning session, elbows
He felt that Mikhailov had given him a dirty check, and so he began punching Mikhailov, who then began kicking at him with his skate and ended up drawing blood from Bergman's leg. That was an amazing moment. Players on both sides just lost it.
I was pushed and I pushed back. So what? Phil says that I was the most unbettable player. So what? I can't stand him either.
Good rivalry.
When something happens and it's not what the Canadians want, they're unhappy with everything. It's their way. And they constantly grumble.
You look at the Phil Esposito, who was showing all of this. He was so animated. He was showing all of these gestures. He was so articulated. And his face was like a gummy bear. No weapons involved. No shooting at each other. But everybody knew that it's a war.
They were challenging us as a people and certainly as a hockey empire.
The Cold War, the us against them attitude was exactly what this turned out to be.
I'll save this. I'll save that thought for you.
I would have killed those son of a bitches to win. It scares me every time I think about it.
Out of this furious battle came two tremendously exciting, incredibly hard-fought games that each ended with Canada winning by a single goal. Both scored by the unheralded Paul Henderson. Henderson's first game winner came in the second period of Game 6, although he probably shouldn't have played at all after suffering a head injury late in Game 5.
I was knocked out. I was knocked out. If I had a helmet on, I probably would have been dead.
Now up on his feet, Dr. Jim Murray.
Jim Murray, who is the doctor in the team, they examined me. Obviously, I had a pounding headache. And he said, Paul, you got a slight concussion. You cannot play. I actually started to cry. I said, Harry, don't do this to me. I said, I want to play. I said, I will be careful. I said, I will be careful. I'll take care of myself. But please, please don't take me out of the lineup. And Harry said, well, if you want to play, I'm not going to stop you.
Henderson's second game winner came near the end of Game 7. A remarkable effort that gave Team Canada a series-saving 4-3 win.
And I think I scored the greatest goal of my life. Went through the whole team and scored with about 2.5 minutes left in the game.
Henderson makes a beautiful move on this goal. This is an absolutely beautiful move by Henderson.
And that, to me, was the most satisfying goal I've ever scored in my life.
They don't slap him on the back of the head. Pat is back. Pat is back.
On the eve of the final game in Moscow, Team Canada might have been far from home, but it certainly wasn't alone. Nearly 3,000 Canadian fans had come to the Soviet Union to follow their team.
Ticket prices for a package to go costs in the mid $600 range for a plane ticket,
I've had this for 5,000 miles.
hotel, and for the game tickets, which, by today's standards is a huge bargain. And those packages sold
a lot of money
immediately.
in 72.
There was just no question when those packages were sold that Canada was going to win.
It's amazing to spend the money and be able to. And getting in the Soviet Union was not easy. Well, maybe these fans are redeeming the harshness of the fans back in Canada a little bit, to put all that aside and fly into behind the Iron Curtain to support your team, your country.
The European tradition is you watch the game almost as if you're at the theater.
How can a human being go to a hockey game and sit quietly? It's just antithetical to what it means to be human.
And then all of a sudden you have the Canadian section. It's just a riot of color and Canadian flags.
But this is a party atmosphere for us. It's a hockey game, but it's a party atmosphere. I mean, we were loud.
Those fans were supportive of us the whole time. Everybody that came there, like 3,000 people, wow, they never give up. I mean, they were like pumping us, but it was amazing.
I can still hear them chanting, and one of the chants was
Da da Canada.
Yet Soviet.
Da da Canada, yet Soviet.
You know, you got these 3,000 crazy Canadians and 10, 12,000 Russian people just sitting there wondering what the heck is going on.
Now, the fact that most of them were hammered has got nothing to do with it, but that I remember that so distinctly. They were there, and they had this trumpeter that used to go to the Montreal games, and he would blow this trumpet. Well, he came over there, and the Russians tried to take this from him.
The Soviet police were trying to track down who had the trumpet, and they would just pass it from person to person to person.
Well, these Canadians were going nuts, you know, yeah. I mean, the poor guys in the army didn't know whether to shoot them or what to do.
And to that end, two gorgeous French-Canadian girls went up and they spun the medals around the fellow sitting there, if you can imagine, with his bayonet. And he didn't know what to do. He just stood there. And then as we passed, you could see he had a great big smile on his face.
Don't let old Boris Brezhnev see that.
Perhaps even more important to Team Canada was the love and support it was now getting from back home.
We started getting telegrams from across Canada, different towns, you know, 400 or 500 names on a telegram wishing us luck. And the whole dressing rooms were filled with thousands upon thousands of names.
I believe they had something like 154,000 telegrams. And Canada pulled together.
The country of Canada basically came to a halt on the day of the game. People either stayed home from work or in their workplace, they were allowed to watch it. Business came to a halt. Telephones fell silent. It was an amazing moment. You'd have to say it was a unifying moment in the sense that Canadians everywhere across the country were all doing the same thing.
You have been writing the script. Couldn't have produced a more dramatic and exciting final. Tonight we are making hockey history.
It's no longer an 8-game series. It's down to a 1-game series.
Here in the Moscow arena here is tense as we get ready for this 8th and final game of the series.
But even before the puck dropped on the deciding game, there was a dispute involving the referees.
Slovakia and Joe Kampala of West Germany are the two referees, and they nearly caused a riot in the
Kampala was of particular concern to Team Canada. In Game 6, he had called a lopsided amount of penalties on the Canadians. And when Game 8 started, the questionable calls returned early and often.
There'll be a penalty, and Peter Mahovlich breaks himself on him, and there's going to be a penalty there, and Canada will play 2 men short.
It was incredible. You know, in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, all of a sudden we're from bing, and then we get another one, bing.
Far-sided shot is stopped, the drive, they bang it in, they score!
After the Soviet Union scored on a power play, another penalty was called on the normally mild-mannered J.P. Parisi.
They wind up in our zone, and I hit them.
He's knocked over by...
Whoop. So now it puts us 5-on-3.
And just one penalty after another in this game.
But not only that, the guy comes to me and he says, 2 minutes interference. So I says, that's not interference. You've got 10. snapped.
Parise tempted to swing his stick at the referee and is totally incensed.
I'm kicked out of the game.
A lot of people lost their temper over that, including myself.
Harrison threw a chair out on the ice. So it's a very severe penalty to Team Canada. Cleared on the right side to Ellis, right in front of the net for Phil Esposito.
After the ugly incident, Team Canada settled down and picked up the pace.
Canadians having a chance. Here's a shot, right on. Quick check. They bang it in. Phil Esposito. They're closing in. Rattel to Park, right in. He scores. Park from Rattel.
But so did the Soviets.
So here's another shot. He scores.
Towards the end of the second period, the Soviets scored twice to take a commanding 2-goal lead. After 27 days, 7 games, and 2 periods, Team Canada was 20 minutes away from the unthinkable. With one final period remaining and their heritage on the line, the boys from Canada were playing their game for their country.
We're not going to lose. We are not going to lose this game. Nobody in this room better quit.
I wasn't the only one saying it. Other guys were standing up saying the same thing.
And I think that's one of the things that makes us uniquely Canadian. The Russians couldn't compete with the Canadians when it came to spirit and heart.
We're not going to lose. No way we're going to lose. Let's go out there and kick the hell out of them, you know? I just trusted myself so much that I wasn't going to let them beat us.
I'm actually getting teary-eyed over this. And I know what, I know they win. I don't know how exactly yet, but whew.
I was like a man possessed.
And there was one point where Ken Dryden was completely out of the play. Esposito rushed into the net.
Esposito slid in front of the net to cover that loose puck.
And the Soviets just shook their heads. They said, this guy is unbelievable. He's everywhere.
Thanks to Phil Esposito, just 2 minutes into the third period, Team Canada got 1 goal closer.
The corner is bumped back to the net, centered it.
It deflected. I pounded it down and I swung and I missed it. Trocek went down, and the second one I just went boom.
But Esposito wasn't done. With just 8 minutes remaining, he imposed his will yet again.
Oh, right in front of the net. Esposito banged that. Here's another shot by Clark Laye. He scores! Canada has tied it up!
There was no disputing the obvious goal. But when the red light didn't go on, an enraged Alan Eagleson feared the Soviets were intent on changing history.
He was starting to run down to the goal judge to see why he didn't turn the light on, and he was grabbed by the guards.
The police were trying to throw Eagleson out. Now we see a fight break out.
So I skated over and I hopped over the boards.
Canadian team came over there to help out.
I'm not sure, but I think I raised my stick at these guards that had machine guns, which wasn't very bright. So then we got Alan to come to our bench, and of course he walked across the ice. He wasn't too gracious about that, as he gave everybody the finger.
When that rumpus started, or whatever it was, nobody knows. Both teams have given everything. It's been one of the best games I think they've ever played. 5 all time, 1:02 left in the game. Canadian team went into a huddle there, which seemed to be a little unusual.
With the game reaching its final minute, and the Soviets seemingly playing for a tie that they claimed would allow them to win the series on total goals, Team Canada's unlikely hero needed to score once more to become a Canadian legend.
I decided if there were a tie.
stood up and I started yelling at Peter Mahavlis to come off the ice. I had never done that before in my life. I never did it again. And I jumped over the boards and the defenseman stuck a stick out. I tripped on it, fell into the boards. I got up so quickly, Phil just whacked the puck at Tretiak and it was right there.
Hardwire has it on that wing. Here's a shot. Henderson made a wild stab for it, fell. Here's another shot right by the score. Henderson has scored for Canada. Henderson right in front of the net. And the fans of the team are going wild. Henderson right in front of the goal. It's goal with 34 seconds left in the game. An absolute mob scene over Paul Henderson as there should be. And this crowd is going wild.
Paul Henderson got that puck from God himself. This had to be a script written by someone above.
We went nuts.
Ecstatic, but there's also a real relief.
It's the closest I've ever come to kissing a man. Really kissing a man. I loved that man that moment. I did.
Shot by Gusev. Tried and played it back to the goal. The game is over. And Canada have won the series. They defeated the Soviets 6-5 in a thrilling, hard-fought tussle here.
Of course, right after the game, there was disappointment. We lost. We are athletes, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. But then the emotions calmed down, and it was time for a sober analysis. We realized this was a good series, and the conclusion was that we played worthy hockey.
And I must say, Foster, is that both these teams played so well, it's a shame that anybody had to lose.
By the time it ended, I was just empty inside. But the disappointment from losing was less than the sheer exhaustion I felt. It was hard to even comprehend what happened. So, yes, I have the disappointment, but pride too. We showed the world that we could play beautiful hockey. So I'd say it's 50-50. These games should be respected. Two amazing teams.
There is nothing better and more rewarding than representing your country. And when you're standing at the blue line and they're playing your national anthem, there is nothing like it.
I think all of us have created a bond that I'm awfully proud of, and that I share this with all of Canada. Like every time I go back there, people still remember it.
And this is the moment that everybody has been waiting for. Phil Esposito, a tired bunch of hockey players, a very weary gang of guys, and a sensational gang for everybody. This has just been one of the great
Well, with Henderson, it's probably just something that happens in the life of an athlete. And it was just very unfortunate for our team. He scored all the big goals. I have to give him credit. And maybe some reverence. It is why he is worshipped in Canada to this day. Even though, as people say, he wasn't really a star on his team. But because of this series, he's become the #1 star.
Americans tend to remember where they were and what they were wearing and who they were with the day Kennedy was shot. Canadians tend to remember where they were and what they were wearing and who they were talking to and who they were with the moment that Paul Henderson scored that goal. That's how important it is in our history.
They don't ask me questions initially. They tell me what they were doing and where they were.
Here's a shot. Henderson made a wild stab, work, fell. Here's another shot. Right by the door. Henderson has scored.
I expect to hear from you guys in the comments what you were doing, where you were when Paul Henderson scored that amazing goal, getting up from the boards like a man possessed.
And even kids that were not even born, they do projects at school, and I get phone calls all the time. There was a 15-year-old kid called me a little while ago, and he says, my dad was telling me about this series, and he said he got so emotional, my dad started to cry. He said, Paul, I've never seen my dad cry in his life.
I'm a little speechless. I'm wondering if I should reflect on this a little bit and then record this, my concluding remarks later. I knew it was going to be epic. I said that. I put it on the thumbnail of my first video, but I couldn't have imagined. If somebody wrote a Hollywood screenplay for a sports movie and this was it, I would read it and say, this is unrealistic. This is silly. This is ridiculous. This couldn't happen. You couldn't have all that drama. You couldn't. This was one of the most fun videos I have ever reacted to, if not the most fun, definitely, hands down, the most fun. I mean, others I felt were very important, and I was proud to do them. This just was amazing. I almost felt like I'm not watching the full games. I'm watching snippets, but this documentary just set the mood and the tone so well that I felt like I was on the edge of my seat and like I was watching these games, and I didn't know what the outcome of most of the games were going to be. I did know that they were going to go to Game 8 and Canada won. I had no idea that it would have taken what it took to win those games in the Soviet Union. I had no idea what Paul Henderson did. The drama, the battle, it's just mind-blowing. Hey guys, sorry, I got interrupted by my kids coming downstairs. So, hey, look, I think I've said everything I need to say. I think my last thoughts are that once upon a time, I thought I didn't like Phil Esposito because of I'm an Islander fan and the Islander-Rangers rivalry. After having watched this video and see he's just a character, I got a huge kick out of him. But more than that speech he gave and his dedication to the country and to winning this series, he gave everything he had, and he set a good example for everyone. And he just epitomized the fighting spirit of the Canadian people. This was amazing. I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you so much for sharing this bit of Canadian history with me, especially related to a sport I love. Peace, my friends, and I will see you soon.